mind. Blink.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the Active Learning Podcast. My name is Vienna Maya, and I am your host. In the first episode of the Daily Allyship Commitment Series, we are going to have a dive into the pre-spec training manual, The Authentic Ally, Mastering Diversity, Equity and Inclusion, and Anti-Racism in 12 Steps. You're probably thinking, can I really become an authentic ally in 12 steps? Well, let's see. The Authentic Ally, Mastering Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Anti-Racism in 12 Steps. You have seen the promotion, you've probably had a look on our website to look at what is this and why should I get it. So this guide is a practical guide to transform your organization. We are seeing it as a training manual for those individuals, either leadership managers, learning and development officers, anyone in an organization that is leading the diversity, equity, inclusion, or anti-racism in the workplace, and they need more tools and resources to continue to do the work. So I'm going to talk you a little bit through the 12 steps that we've got in here and why we found these 12 steps to be really important to support organizations to continue to do the work and to continue to move forward. Inside, we start off with education. We're using the pillars of allyship in here. So we start off with education. So it's important for people to go back and understand what is diversity, equity and inclusion and anti-racism and how does that play out in the organization. From there, we also talk about the setting your goals and your matrix, which are very important. Sometimes organizations set goals, but they don't set a matrix that they can review and reflect and check weekly, monthly, yearly, quarterly, etc. However way you like to check your performance. It's very important that you set up your matrix, and we talk about this as well. We then discuss how to create that culture of awareness and training and a mixture of long-term and short-term training, sessions, workshop to make it more tangible for your whole organization to go through this journey, this practical journey of allyship together. So you have to create pockets of learning and different forms of learning, not just online learning as some organizations tend to do, or training only a small group of people in the hope that learning is going to be trickled down into the organization. You want to make sure, and this is something that we really, when we work with organization, we talk about a lot, is about ensuring that your whole organization are given the tools and resources to be the ally that you want them to be in order for you to achieve the equity and equality that you want to achieve within your organization, and that's created an inclusive environment, an environment of belonging for all. From there, we discuss beyond the numbers, so addressing tokenism. And tokenism is not spoken enough about, and we really wanted to address it in here because organizations have done a lot of work in representation, increasing and improving representation in the workplace. However, that then leads to tokenism when those individuals who have been hired or have been promoted to a certain role that gives the illusion of inclusion, of diversity, yet they don't have equal opportunity or the power to influence the change within the organization. So we really looked into this and researched this, and tokenism is something that we really wanted to ensure that there's an understanding of it in here, and then how do we go beyond that? How do we tackle that? How do we see it, spot it, and do something about it? Within the guide, we've created spaces for reflection. So that reflection can be used by the individual who's going to run the program, or you can take the questions and use it throughout your whole organization. So the guide can be used in any way that you wish, but we've wanted to make sure that we give you enough information and resources to put in the work. I don't want to make this a long guide where people collect it and then it stays there and collects dust because they haven't been able to use it. And this is why we've included reflective questions, action points, so you're able to first read the whole thing and then go in and take action on the key areas in which we've created activities for you to do. We wanted to make this practical that you can use yourself, or you can later on work with us where you can work with me for over 12 weeks to go through each different section and make sure that you're able to embed it in your organization. Okay. And then, of course, we go through the usual unmasked and unconscious bias, because yes, unconscious bias training is getting a bit of a bad rep. And this is because people don't do it beyond the initial training. That initial training awakens the unconscious. And when there's that awareness, what do we do about that? Do we just leave people to have different thoughts, and which then creates resentment, tension, because you haven't given your people the tools and resources to work through that unconscious? What does that mean? And then what are the tools and resources available for us to then create that inclusion, that equality, etc. in our organization? We discuss embracing overcoming resistance, so embracing change, because again, when you start to put in the work, there will be resistance. Human beings, we are made to love comfort. We talk a lot about becoming comfortable with being uncomfortable, stepping out of a comfort zone. But what does that mean for people when it comes to stepping out of a comfort zone? That's where the resistance is happening. So we want to give people the space to understand what is the resistance, why do they have it, and then what do we need to do to remove that, to dismantle that. Okay. And some of that resistance will come from a place of fear, that fear of loss, the fear of losing either their, if you have an organization where your promotion depends on how long you've been in the organization, and then suddenly you're talking about bringing in different and diverse talent, bringing in people that you've never recruited in your organizations before, and very likely that these individuals are going to be overqualified. They're going to have the skill set that could take them to the next position. So there is competition that's going to be brewing within your organization. So you want to talk about that. What does that look like? The makeup of your organization, how you promote, how people grow, etc. So resistance usually shows up when you're not having honest conversation with your employees, your staff, and really understanding where they are, how they feel. Do they feel like they belong in your organization? If not, why not? Before we start bringing new people into the space. We talk about leadership, reflecting on your decision making in here, fostering an inclusive workplace culture, company culture. That one is so important, so key. When I'm usually running a workshop and I ask in the room, what is your company culture? Majority of the time, people don't know what the company culture is. Culture is thrown about left, right, and center, but a lot of people don't actually know what their company culture is. They can regurgitate it for what's on the website, but when you really think about what does that look like, what does that feel like, a lot of people don't always know what their company culture is. And culture fit tend to be the way that in which people are rejected from a job place, because what they've written, what they look like, how they speak, how they sound, how they move, etc. That's the bias that comes in, perception, etc. that comes in during the recruitment, or once a person's in the space, once the person has started a role in that job, etc. I say etc. a lot because there's so much that I want to cover in here, but this is just a short introduction to the guide. But yeah, so company culture, what does that look like? When you're talking about fostering an inclusive workplace culture, what does that look like? We ask you lots of exploration questions in this guide. For example, one of the reflective questions that we have is, how diverse is your organization's leadership? What benefit could greater diversity in leadership role bring? These are really good questions to ask, because there are data, statistics, that give us the business case of why we need diversity in leadership. But do we ask these questions within our own organization? A one-off workshop and a talk and a panel session is not enough for you to really understand what does it mean for you as an organization to have diversity in your leadership. Diversity of thoughts, diversity of representation, diversity of anything that is going to move your organization forward. And also, what are you missing when you don't have diversity in that leadership position? But what does that look like? How do you promote? How do people get into those leadership positions? Those are the questions that you want to be really thinking about there. So yes, there's a lot in here on this 50 pages manual, but we've managed to pack in quite a lot for you to think about. I haven't gone through the whole list, We also talk about investing in diversity, equity, inclusion, allocating resources within or externally to ensure that you are implementing everything that you say you're going to do. We then talk about acknowledging intersectionality, because it's good to talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, anti-racism, all of these things. It's good to give them this silo-focused moment, but then you want to bring in that intersectionality, because as people, we don't just present with one identity or one makeup of us. I like to describe people like onions. We have multiple layers of us, and for us to really create that space of belonging, people need to be able to bring everything of themselves to a point. We're going to discuss that in the podcast of what does it mean to be authentically you and to bring your whole self to the workplace, etc. There's some things that you can leave behind. Not everything needs to be out there in the workplace, because the workplace, as the title says, is your workplace. You're there to do your job. So not everything of yours needs to be out in the open. However, a person needs to be able to choose what and how they present themselves. So intersectionality is such an important topic and action, and in terms of allyship, or in terms of the initiatives that you're thinking of doing in your organization, it's very important to bring that back. So it's about the full circle. We have to give space to discuss this different subjects and topics, but we always need to bring it back to that full circle, that intersectionality, because we do live in a world where self-identification is important for people, that they are not told who and what and how they behave and move, etc. So when you leave out intersectionality in your organization and conversation, that's when we create problems, because then we put a focus on one group and then we see other groups or individuals being left behind. And then when we do think about them, we start to do the whataboutery conversation when it comes to creating that inclusion and belonging in your organization. We're going to really dive into this more in the separate topics during the podcast. The last part of the guide is where we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, and anti-racism being beyond compliance. We've seen how policies that were created between 2020 and 2022, the policies that organizations created, especially around racial equity in the workplace, how now is 2024, there's a big backtrack and pullback of that. Because these policies were made in a rush without consideration and thought for the long-term play. If we can quickly dismantle policies, especially racial equity, dismantle these policies, why is it that we take so long to create policies in general in your organization that can shift your organization forward? It just shows that a lot of companies were making policies based on being seen to be doing the right thing, improve the reputation, because at the time it was, Black Lives Matter, and the lens and the focus, the look into your organization was hot. Now the eyes and the energy is kind of pulled back a little bit. Suddenly we're seeing organization changing the mind or changing the wording, etc. So we want to tackle that diversity, equity, inclusion, and your anti-racism is beyond your compliance. Okay? And what does that look like? How can you embed it so that you are continuing to move forward? Because this is really important for the sustainability and the survival of your organization. The employees, the future that is coming up, the generation that is coming up now, who are going to guide and take your organization forward, who are going to maintain the legacy of your organization, demand and require that you have true and sustainable diversity, equity, inclusion within. And the last part of this is then listening to the voices. So incorporating your employee feedback. There was a lot of amplification of voices, especially I'll go back to those crucial 3 years, the last 3 years that we've had. We've seen how we can, when we want to put in action, when we want to really put some rockets up spaces and get things done, we can do it. But we seem to then go backwards and fall back into the default, which is to make decisions using a small group of people, make poor quality decision, and then we wonder why we keep falling backwards. So come back to what you did. is incorporate your employees' feedback, reflect and review what you've done already in the past and how you want to move forward. So the amplification of voices need to continue. And if you're not sure what to do or how to do it, you can always come and work with us. Come and work with Prespect. We have various frameworks, programs, and sessions that we have developed over time to work with your organization to make sure that you be and become the authentic ally that you can be. Thank you. Bye.